So guys, this is for your consent that I have started recording of this session and I'll be sharing this video via YouTube with every one of you. Okay, so let's begin. So guys, the particular topic which we are going to discuss here within this session is DevOps. So guys, I would like to understand first of all that is there anyone who is already working as DevOps engineer? Yes, guys, is there anyone who is working as a DevOps engineer?
Okay, Lokendra, can you please let me know what are the things we are going to cover in this session?
Yes,
What are the topics we will...
yes, definitely. I'm coming to that particular point only. Okay, so the very first thing here is today we are going to discuss here the particular life cycle of DevOps. And aside to this, we are going to discuss that what are the tools and technology we are going to cover, what are going to be expectation, what sort of expectation you guys can have from this particular batch. Moreover, the particular tools which we are going to discuss as per interview preparation. So what sort of knowledge you guys must have before joining this particular session, because this is not for those guys, especially who do not have any sort of knowledge related to these tools. So guys, first of all, let me tell you what is DevOps. Then after, what does DevOps guys do? What are the roles and responsibility which are supposed to be handled by DevOps team? If you join this particular course, so how it is going to be beneficial for you? Then after, the particular tools and technology which we are going to cover under this particular session related to DevOps interview preparation, these sort of things we are going to discuss. Right, guys? So when we talk about DevOps, so guys, there are a couple of tools which are basically used by DevOps team, right? So the very first tool here, which we are going to cover under this particular session, that is going to be Git. So I guess every one of us is aware of Git. So people call it Git as well. So this is the particular tool which is used to handle source code management, like SCM, source code management. Multiple developers or whosoever is working as a developer, so they have to write their code with the help of any IDE, like software development tool on their local laptop. Then after they push their code to Git. Now there are a lot of challenges which developer face. Let us say they do not have admin rights onto this particular tool. So DevOps team has to come into picture. Let us say, now there could be one interview question and a person might ask you during interview, okay, what is your role as a DevOps? What do you do on day-to-day basis? So guys, you should be knowing about Git, like what are the roles and responsibility which are supposed to be performed by a DevOps engineer, such as we will be discussing in more detail, but just giving an overview of it. Let us say if new person is going to join, then in that case, DevOps team is responsible to assign that person access onto Git. Second thing, DevOps team is going to be responsible to assign access to individual users onto individual branches. Let us say there are different branches. Third thing, how do we manage the branching strategy? Are we deploying the code from Git to production environment via branch, or do we use tag methodology? If we are using tag, then how we are managing the particular tagging? If we are using branches, then what are the branches, and based on what we have selected this type of Git branching strategy? These sort of things has to be taken care by DevOps. DevOps team is going to be responsible to design these sort of things. Once DevOps team has designed this particular Git branching strategy, then after the entire ecosystem, maybe your developer, tester, and other environments and other engineers are going to follow that. Moreover, DevOps team is also going to be responsible to ensure that there are like proper way, because definitely like if you're working with any organization where multiple audits keeps on happening, so DevOps team will be responsible to ensure that the person who has rights to do development will not have rights to do deployment. Why it is so? Otherwise, a single person will be allowed to make changes within any Git repository, and then the same person can push changes to production environment. So that will be breach of security, because wherever we are working, so there has to be zero trust environment. Guys, what do we understand? What is zero trust environment? Is there anyone who understands zero trust environment? Ajit, Akhil, Akram, anyone? Bantu? Lakshmi?
Yeah, it's maybe like not to trust anyone, don't assume things. So we have to always like make sure um, think negatively. Maybe if you give the more permissions or anything to give before giving to any user, not to give all the permissions to any users or something like that.
Okay, fine, great, good to know that. So let me come on to second tool. Then after this particular concept will be more clear that what is zero trust environment. So guys, let me tell you one thing here very clearly. So there are two major tools where DevOps team has access. First of all, Git, then after Jenkins. Okay, so let me add something here that when we call it, and why do we call it like zero trust environment? For example, we have 5 members in DevOps team, or maybe 10 members in DevOps team. So right now, what is going to happen? Jenkins is integrated with Git. Now, integration means Jenkins can pull any sort of code from GitHub. All the developers are going to do development. They will add their code onto GitHub or GitLab, whatever the particular like front end of Git developers are using or DevOps team is using. That's a different thing. But Jenkins is integrated with Git. Now Jenkins server can pull any sort of code from Git without providing any username and password, because once it is integrated on SSH based authentication, then password will not be required. Now let us say, for example, there are 5 users. Let us say Tom, Jack, Susan, Natasha, and Harry. So these 5 users are the DevOps guys, right? Tom, Jack, Susan, Natasha, and Harry. These are the particular DevOps guys. So these guys have access to Git as well as to Jenkins. So now there will be no zero trust environment. Why it is so? Because let us assume that these are very trustable guys. But what if there is a day when Natasha is going to leave the organization and the person is really not happy with the organization? There are some grudges because of which Natasha is leaving the organization. Maybe it may cause of like less pay hike, or maybe like position was not like appraisal was given, but increment was not given. That sort of things were there. So what Natasha can do here is, Natasha is administrator on Git. Moreover, Natasha has access to Jenkins server. Now, when we talk about like we have different environments here, what sort of environment we have? Like we have dev, like development environment, we have UAT environment, we have prod environment. So when we have, maybe like we can include obviously like test, or you can call that QA environment. We have different type of environment. We are going to discuss in detail that what is the requirement of it. Now Jenkins server is integrated with all these servers with key-based authentication. There is no password required. Jenkins server will have connectivity as well as access to these servers without any username and password. Natasha has access to Git as well as to Jenkins. And when Jenkins is passwordless with these servers, so Natasha can perform any activity, like Natasha can commit any code here. Natasha can build that and can ship the code to production without seeking for any approval. Although we can say that we have proper approval cycle. We do not upload any code. We do not upload any code to production without proper sign off. But let us say that if Natasha does not want to seek any approval, maybe from dev, from QA, from UAT, so will Natasha be able to do it or not, guys? This is a question for you. Yes, guys. Did you get the scenario?
Yes, yes, sir.
So will Natasha be able to do it? Like as a developer, Natasha can commit the code to Git. When the person has access to Jenkins, Natasha can create a build out of that code and can push to production. So is there any breach of like trust?
Yes, yes, there is.
So being DevOps, we have to ensure that the person who has access on Jenkins up to administrator level will not have access on Git up to administrator level. Maybe we can define the segregation of like roles and responsibility. Let us say we will define that only user Jack and Susan will have access to Git, and user Tom, Natasha, and Harry will have access to Jenkins. So now in that particular case, only Tom, Natasha, and Harry will be able to do deployments, wherein Jack and Susan will have access to Git. So they will be able to merge, but they will not be able to deploy. And the person who will be able to deploy will not be able to merge. Are we clear with that? So these sort of things we are going to discuss, that how do we define these sort of segregation of roles and responsibility. Because whenever we are going to hire a DevOps engineer, so DevOps engineers should be capable enough to define and design these sort of strategies, which is going to help their organization to be stable and to be trusted as well. Because we cannot trust anyone within organization. Although until unless we trust, we cannot work. But though even we should create such an environment, such an ecosystem where we are working in zero trust policy, right? So we are going to discuss these sort of things here. Then after, we are going to discuss one another tool. So guys, these are the like name of tools which we are going to discuss within this course. So first of all, we are going to discuss like what is Git branching strategy. We are going to discuss here like what are the roles and responsibility. We are going to discuss like what sort of task do we get on daily basis onto Git, right? What sort of support do we provide to developers? Being DevOps, what sort of support do we provide to developers? That sort of thing we are going to discuss here. Right, guys? Okay, then after same thing, like what type of job do we create? What are the plugin do we use? How do we secure your Jenkins? Let us say if there are 500 users working in your organization, so how do you assign them access onto individual jobs? So these sort of things we are going to discuss here, right? So after that, we will discuss about Ansible. So guys, under Ansible, what we are going to discuss, let us say an interviewer might ask you scenario-based question that this is the scenario, how will you do it? For example, let me give you a question. I have 500 servers running into production environment. If you remember, we mentioned the name of 5 users here. Let us say Ram, Sham, so Ram, Sham, Raja, Anil, Joy. These are 5 users, guys, right? So let us say if I want that user Raja is going to leave organization, and rather than saying calling it like Raja is going to leave organization, it is like pleasantly it is last working day of the person in the organization, but Raja is being fired because of some COC, like code of conduct breach. Raja is being fired. So Raja has access to all the 500 servers. How will you be able to block Raja's access from all the servers? Yes, guys. So how long will you take? Let us say if you have to perform that activity manually, how long will you take to disable a user's access from 500 servers? Any idea,
Yeah,
guys?
it will take time because we have to go and create manually, right? We have to change the password and the manually, right, for particular member.
Right? Perfectly fine. So guys, we should have appropriate answers during interview. So first of all, what we are going to say that at the very first point in time, we know very well that whenever a user is going to connect to our servers, maybe into production environment, first of all, user has to connect with VPN, right? So the very first step which we are going to take as soon as we are informed that the person Raja is not part of organization anymore, first of all, we will disable the user from Active Directory. Second thing, we will disable the user's access from our VPN server. Third thing, we will use our Ansible playbook in order to disable or in order to restrict or delete the users from all the individual servers with the help of Ansible playbook. So in that case, there might be a use case. A person might ask you during interview, okay, can you walk me through with any of the use case which you have recently used with the help of Ansible playbook? Or a person might ask you during interview, okay, can you tell me like what is recent playbook have you written? So these sort of questions a person might ask you during interview. So we have to be ready with the use cases. Second thing, the modules. Moreover, the major questions which are usually asked on the top of Ansible about the hierarchy. Let us say a person might ask you, okay, what is template? What is item? What are the variables here? How do we define software in, like how do we define server inventory? How do you manage dynamic inventory in Ansible? Let us say a person might ask you that my servers are running in AWS and I have configured auto scaling for the same. So number of servers keep on increasing and keep on reducing. So there is no fixed number of servers. How will you ensure to perform activity on these sort of servers? So these sort of questions we will have to ensure that what module you are using. If you are managing Ansible playbook, which you are writing for cloud servers, for cloud environment, what additional module do you use? So these sort of things we are going to discuss here. Moreover, the more practical use case, that the particular use cases which we have to face during real-time environment, that sort of thing we are going to discuss here. Moreover, a person might ask you, okay, do you write playbooks every day? So the answer, what will you give? So a person does not write Ansible playbook on daily basis. Yes, these Ansible playbook may be required to be modified. But as a DevOps engineer, guys, we do not write Ansible playbook on daily basis, because once automation is done, maybe we can invoke this Ansible playbook with the help of Jenkins. Maybe we may provide these Ansible playbooks to all DevOps engineers to ensure that all the servers where disk is associated, these are cleaned properly. Like for housekeeping activities, we can use these Ansible playbooks. Maybe DevOps team, maybe TechOps team, maybe like NOC team can use these Ansible playbooks for doing housekeeping sort of stuff on the environment. But we do not write Ansible playbooks on daily basis. Yes, enhancement can be done, but we should know that Ansible is such a tool where playbooks are not written on daily basis. These are written and modified based on requirement, right? So it is not like that we are working on Git on daily basis. Whenever a developer starts working, developer has to commit code into Git on daily basis. Whenever there is a deployment, DevOps team is responsible to log into Jenkins and execute the build and do the deployment and others. Same way, DevOps team does not write Ansible playbooks on daily basis. There are specific use cases. There are specific modifications. These are supposed to be done by DevOps team, but based on the requirement. So guys, any questions so far? If you have any question, then I would love to answer that.
Okay, I have one small question. Okay, as per the organization policy, there is no more SSH allowed to the server connectivity. So in that case, how you are going to connect with the Ansible to the all the servers?
Come again. Can you repeat your question? Your question will definitely have an answer. Come again.
Okay. So as per organization policy, SSH connectivity is not allowed. Okay.
Okay.
SSH is not allowed. Okay. So in that case, how we are going to make the connectivity between Ansible tower to all the nodes, right?
Okay. So there are two ways. If your organization does not allow to have this type of connectivity, then what we are going to do? So there are some other tools which do not require to be connecting to rest of nodes based on SSH. What we can do here is we can select any other tool, because see, if organization does not allow, either we can go with Puppet or we can go with Chef, because Ansible works with the help of SSH only. So we may have to go with any other tool. Moreover, what we can do here is we can write a particular script which can download the code from other servers. Let us say, obviously, like HTTP or HTTPS based connectivity will be required, will be allowed. Maybe SFTP connectivity will be allowed. So what we can do here is, because all the servers are working in the same fashion, right? When we have equal ecosystem, when we have all the servers in an organization which are supposed to be running with the same configuration. I'm not talking about application property should be same, but I'm talking about, let us say, if number of users has to be created, if number of packages has to be like updated, if any user has to be allowed or blocked, maybe DNS settings has to be modified. So what we can do here is, we will allow the configurations of all the servers to be kept in a centralized repository, and these repositories can be called with the help of HTTP or with the help of HTTPS protocol onto all servers. These servers can pull the code maybe once in a day, twice in a day, or based on the like frequency, whatever we are going to set. So all the servers are going to download the software, like that particular server configuration file from GitHub, and then either services can be started or whatever activity has to be performed, that can be done. Because see, if SSH connection is not allowed, then there has to be some other way. We have to look for those tools which do not require SSH protocol to be used in order to work. I guess that answers the question.
Yeah, okay.
Pardon?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. Thanks for updating. Yeah.
Okay, great. So in that particular case, guys, what happens? Let us say Ansible is the particular tool which we are going to discuss during this particular session. In obviously in classes, this is just a demo, like what we are going to cover, what is agenda, what we are going to cover, and why. After that, guys, we are going to cover about the particular Docker container. So guys, why we are going to cover Docker container? Because we should be knowing about the environments. Let me tell you what sort of environment do we have. Either it could be a particular physical server. So initially we started working with physical server. Then after, the world started moving towards virtual machines. And finally, we are working with containers. And this is not the like end of life, but as of today, we are working with like functions, like serverless. So you might have heard of cloud function or maybe Lambda. These are the particular technologies where people are working as of today. But guys, what we are going to cover here, we are not going to cover a physical server. We are not going to cover your VMs. But most of people are willing to know that how much does a person know about containers. So container is a particular next term which we are going to discuss here. And like what is container? How do we create container? What is Docker file? How do we manage networking for Docker container? These sort of things we are going to discuss. Yes, that will be optional. If people might be interested to know about Kubernetes, then definitely we can discuss about that too. But major focus is going to be on Docker, and especially like what is Docker file, what are component of it, Docker networking, how do we manage storage inside it, how do we ensure that scalability, what is Docker Compose, what is Docker Swarm, these sort of thing we are going to discuss. Moreover, production use cases, like how do you secure your Docker images, what is Docker registry, what is difference between public and private registry, what are the requirements, in which use case we can keep our images onto public repository, in which use case we have to create our own Docker registry, right? These sort of things we are going to discuss. So being a DevOps engineer, what is going to be your role in this particular environment? Do you write Docker file yourself, or does your developer provide it? So if you have to answer these sort of questions, so these cannot be straightforward that I write or developer write. If you have to write, you need input from developer. Then there will be a question like what sort of input you need from developer end. If developer write, then what sort of input do you provide them? Like what sort of environment do you support? Like how you are planning to scale it, how many containers you are going to run, how you are going to manage the particular resources on underlying hardware, like how do you ensure that the number of open files are not going to be limited, how do you allow a single user to open n number of files. These sort of like there are two major concepts like C groups and namespace. If you understand these things, we are going to discuss these sort of like namespacing. We are going to understand like C group concept in this particular session. Why it is so? Because guys, until unless you understand like C name and like C group and namespacing concept, till the time Docker will not be very easy. Because see, you can execute the commands, but if there is a problem, how you're going to troubleshoot that? So that sort of thing, guys, definitely we are going to cover under this particular interview preparation session. So guys, next component will be here, like one web server. So we are going to discuss here Apache. So guys, you might have heard of multiple web server tools like if it is Apache, Nginx, Tomcat, IIS. So guys, within this particular course, we are going to cover Apache. Right? Like what is web hosting, what is IP-based virtual hosting, what is name-based virtual hosting? Can we host multiple websites on the same server? Can we host same website on multiple server? If yes, then how? If no, then why? That sort of thing we are going to discuss. Then after, how do you check like what are the modules of Apache being used here? If you need to add any additional module into Apache, what are the use cases of module? Why do we use it? These sort of things we are definitely going to cover. Right, guys? Then after, not only this, we are going to cover one database as well, but up to administrative level. So guys, keep this thing in mind. We are going to cover MySQL here, because being DevOps, ideally, we are not supposed to optimize databases. Once again, I'll repeat the statement. Being DevOps, we are not supposed to like optimize MySQL database, but at least what is required from us. So first of all, like we should be able to install it. We should be able to, let's say, take backup. If there is a requirement, some developer says that my application is working in SIT properly, but whenever I'm sending my release to production, that does not work. So I would like to debug my application with production database. So definitely we cannot assign the particular developer to have right to production database, right? So what we have to do here is we will remove a specific columns, specific rows, or maybe like we can provide only like database schema from production to like dev environment. So who is supposed to perform that task? DevOps team. Taking them from one environment, restoring it on another. Let us say someone is asking, okay, like this environment is working fine, but we need to add one more server as a slave machine into environment. We should be knowing it, right? Let us say someone is going to ask you that my database is corrupted. How will you restore it? So you should be knowing about like what is my ISAM. You should be knowing about what is like InnoDB. You should be knowing about what is use case of like binlog in MySQL. How do we create tables? How do we take backup of individual tables? How do we migrate it? So these sort of things, like basic administrative tasks, we should be knowing. Definitely, I would not say that being DevOps, we are supposed to optimize queries. We are supposed to like optimize indexes on individual tables or databases, right? We are not supposed to know to that much, but at least basic things, basic operational like commands, we should be knowing. Okay, guys, do you have any questions so far? Do I make sense when I'm telling all these things?
Yeah, Lokesh, we have AWS RDS is there in managed service. So why do we need database?
Come again?
Yeah, AWS RDS is there, right? So it can manage all the like databases.
Yes, definitely you are right. But if you see, most of organization, even after having we have RDS there, multiple databases like MySQL, PostgreSQL, even MongoDB we have there. We have like Microsoft SQL, we have Oracle, and aside to that, we have Aurora as well. But even though after having these sort of services available on AWS platform, people prefer to install their databases onto EC2 machine. Why it is so? Because they have full access to their machine, whatever they want, they can do that. Second thing, comparatively, EC2 machines are cheaper than that of RDS, because organization does not only want to have high availability, because organization has to run the server for entire calendar year and year on year. So that is why people prefer to have that sort of databases running onto EC2 machine, and to save cost and to have high availability as well. Getting point? Moreover, if there is a requirement, let us say some auditor says that we cannot have our database running onto production, onto cloud environment. We have like customers data, we are just storing customer data, and maybe like, let us say if you are working with such an organization where cloud computings are not allowed. So in that case, definitely guys, you will have to work in on-prem data center, and you guys will be working on virtual machines only. So does that answer the question?
Yes, Lokesh.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
So
Lokesh, I have one more question, Lokesh.
please go ahead. Please feel free.
Okay. So as you said, right, Docker, right, Docker container where you are going to host, okay, in the physical server or any one of the containerization tool like Kubernetes or something like Apache or something like that.
Okay, so when we are talking about Docker, so Docker is basically a containerized environment only. As of today, there are multiple container environment available. Let us say you can have Heroku, and maybe like even VMware is providing its own containerized platform. We have we have Kubernetes to manage containers. Docker containers can be managed by Kubernetes. Even Linux containers can be managed by Kubernetes. So what we need to understand here is like, how does containerized application work? Let us say if I want that one set of containers should not be like able to connect with other set of containers. How do we isolate that? How do we have different set of network in container? Let us say if container is running, usually there is a question during interviews. Okay, let us say if my container is terminated because of any unforeseen reason, will my data be made available? So like right now the person is asking about like, what will you ensure to keep your container up and running? The person is asking that, do you have knowledge about mounting volumes inside container? How will you have persistent data with existing running containers? So question will be something else, but you need to understand the direction of that question in order to respond it properly.
Okay.
So that sort of like the requirement we will try to understand. Obviously, guys, like if we talk about myself, it's been more than 1.5 decades. I have been like working into IT industry. I've been teaching for more than 15 years now. So what I will try to tell you here is, see, I'm not going to teach you Docker container. I will not teach you for sure Apache, but I will help you with my experience that within my past experience, because see, like I have faced interviews like with multiple MNCs. Like facing interview is my hobby, right? So I get to know like what are the expectation of people. So I will not share the commands with you exactly. Okay, these are like 10 commands, remember it, and after that you will be able to you will be able to go through your interview, right? I will not do that. What I will do here is I would like to share my personal experience with you guys. That if you are preparing with Git, that up to what extent you should be knowing if you have this much level of experience. Moreover, what are the expectation of interviewer? Because I've been part of interview panel for more than a decade now, right? So I will not be telling you the exact commands, but I will be telling you the perspective. Like if you are preparing anything, then how do you need to prepare it? If you're working with Apache, so up to what extent you should be knowing it? Let us say if someone is going to ask you, okay, what is the particular segment, like what is the particular sequence of log, or what are the particular fields getting printed in Apache logs? You need to know that. What you need to tell here is, see, logs parameter can be different from one server to another, from one environment to another. If we need to know the exact parameter, what are the particular sections being printed here, we can go to Apache log file, and over there, this is the particular field where from we can identify that what are the fields getting printed in logs. So we need not to remember the particular logs format. We need not to remember the particular parameters, the particular like fields getting printed. What we need to understand here is that person is not trying to know that can you read the Apache logs? The person is trying to know that if there is a requirement to add or to remove any field from the logs, will you be able to do it? Getting point?
Yes.
Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Okay, very like one more very like famous question. So many people ask, I don't know why, but yes, there is a question. Okay, what is the log level in your organization? What is the application log level in your organization?
Okay, the log level information will be different based on the environment. Okay, for development, you need to have the error debug level log. In
Okay.
production, only in the error logs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. So let me tell you guys, this question actually does not make sense, because if you have, let us say, a terabyte of disk space available in your servers, you can have maybe like info or maybe debug mode in your production environment. Why it is so? Because you are not running out of disk space. Second thing, maybe you can go up to tracing, like even lower than that debug and info mode, you can go for that. But when you talk about log level, so you should be knowing that what are different log levels, in which use case, what sort of log level should be used. If you understand like there is info, debug, maybe warning, maybe emergency, alert, critical. So that sort of different log labels are there, and you should be knowing like in which use case, what particular log label to be used. Moreover, how do you change log label in application property file? What are the application property files for individual application? Let us say if it is Apache, where to change the log label? If it is any Java file, so where do you need to change the log label, right? So that sort of thing you should be knowing. The person does not want you to tell the particular name, but the person will try to know that if there is a requirement going forward in the organization, so will you be able to modify the log label? Getting point, guys? So these sort of like question is something different, but the expectation of the person is something different. That sort of thing we need to understand, because not only telling, okay, we are using warning, the person may ask you why. You said that we are using like error. Person may ask you why error, why not warning? So will you wait till the time the error is there, like service stops working? Will you wait till that time? So no, it is not like that. So what happens here is we have to be responsible. We have to be very like quick responsive at that moment. That yes, if this is the case, we will do this. If this is the case, we are going to perform this. So these sort of things, guys, definitely we are going to like understand. We are going to discuss these sort of things during this particular session. Okay, after MySQL, guys, we will discuss about a particular monitoring tool that is going to be Prometheus. So guys, when we talk about Prometheus, so along with Prometheus, like what sort of front end tool you are using? When we talk about monitoring, so guys, there is a very like popular question which usually people ask, and even I have faced this particular question multiple times. Let us say one microservice is going live. You are using Dockerized environment. So what sort of monitoring component will you ensure to place? Like what sort of data point will you prefer to monitor? Is there anyone who can help me with that? Did you get my question? There is, let me repeat it again. There is a new microservice going live. You are the person who is leading that project. You need to ensure that what are the data points you will ensure to monitor. Do you guys?
Yeah, network monitoring.
I will not judge you based on your like okay, why did you skip that? Why did you not add that? That is just a proper discussion I would like to have.
Yeah, like network monitoring and system monitoring.
No, I'm talking about data points. Like under network monitoring, what sort of network monitoring will you do? Like incoming traffic, outgoing traffic, incoming packet size, outgoing packet size. What all data points would you prefer to monitor? That sort of thing I'm looking for.
CPU utilization, memory utilization, like that. You're asking, right?
Yes. Please go ahead.
We will get the details from like any third-party tool like Datadog or Splunk.
So, and also we need to check the ports. Okay. So suppose if you're in some going live with new microservice, right? If you're going to expose with XYZ port, okay, the port need to be open. For example, so the web server level to app server, we need to open the port connectivity. We need to check the connectivity areas. And also we need to check the security level, like what kind of security the application is using, what kind of security algorithm is used by the web server. We need to know the security level. That is one of the most thing we need to understand. If you are using different algorithm in the application, but web server using different algorithm, it won't support. So we need to make sure is everything should be the same algorithm. Like, for example, web server using TLS 1.2 or 1.3, but application only supporting TLS 1.1, then it will break the connectivity. Those things we need to monitor.
Okay, good. Nice point for sure. Okay, but let us talk about from infra. Okay, let us say that before deploying our application, because our developer has to test the things within dev environment as well, right? And production environments are exact replica of piece of software and the services which are being delivered into production environment, right? So let us assume these things are taken care. Now, from infrastructure point of view, what are the particular data point which you play, would you like to place under monitoring?
Monitoring, suppose, okay, so already the server hosted with so many microservices. If you are going to include yet another one of new microservices, right? Okay. So during the time before that,
okay, what's your name? I can see only iPhone written file there.
Okay, Raja.
Raja. Okay, it means I was pointing to same person. Jokes apart. Okay, yes, Raja, go ahead.
Okay, as for example, okay, so if you're going to introduce new microservice with the existing a lot of microservices running on the single server, okay,
let us assume that that is a newly created virtual machine where you are supposed to place all these things. That is not under monitoring so far.
Okay, so monitoring means, okay, first of all, you need to monitor the system healthiness. Okay, there is a more important things. Okay, so those things, okay, so monitoring will be, so many tools will be there to monitor, like what is the CPU utilization, what is the memory utilization, what is the network utilization, like bandwidth. Those things you need to monitor. You need to put the threshold. Okay, so once, okay, for example, if a CPU utilization going more than 80%, okay, you need to put the threshold at 80%. Once it's reached 80%, the monitoring tool need to send out the email saying that it is overutilized, CPU utilization high for this particular server. So those kind of things we need to monitor in the system level.
Okay.
And also if any connectivity coming from across a different network, for example, most of the time we can be able to see some network incoming IP address, right? So from different domain will come. So we need to monitor those IPs, what are the IPs coming to our reaching our servers. Those kind of things we need to monitor during that time. Then
okay,
what else?
Good approach. And what about the particular service which you are deploying? What are the particular data point you are going to monitor within service? That is from server side, right? From
yes,
service.
Yes, service also. Okay, so if we are running any services, right? So the services will be accessible via one of the port, exposed to the via one of the port. Okay, we need to monitor the port. Okay, the port is already listening or not. If the port is not listening, then it need to alert the ticket.
Okay, let me make it more easy for you. You are going to deploy a Java microservice. So what are the data points you will monitor for that?
Are you telling about application logs?
Okay, application logs, definitely you can monitor that. Good. What else?
Process ID, you need to monitor the process ID.
So, okay, when you say port number, so port number is bind with any process ID only. So it means both are getting monitored with the same thing.
Yes.
See, like we cannot have a static port, a static process ID for any process. Let us say if you need to restart because of any unforeseen reason, so process ID will get changed. We cannot monitor process ID like ideally.
Yeah, process ID. Yeah. So we cannot monitor the process ID, but we need to monitor the port number.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you for that.
Downtime zero downtime.
Zero downtime, it means you are talking about high availability, that all the services should not be started at once. That is a different thing. That is for high availability perspective. But we are discussing about monitoring part.
Okay.
Monitoring.
Is it something like status codes?
Yes.
Java version?
Java version is basically decided before implementing the service. So we need not to monitor about the Java version because that is common across environments. Maybe it is dev. Because see, if you have developed your microservices, maybe Java service, for example, on Java 1.6, so you cannot run that with Java 1.9 or 1.17 into production environment. That Java version has to remain same. We need not to monitor Java version. Yes, as a housekeeping activity, we have to ensure that Java is same across the environment. Maybe dev, QA, UAT, test, pre-prod, prod environment. That has to be same across the environment, but we need not to do monitoring for that.
Okay, and also we need to monitor one more thing. Okay, there is a more important. Okay, certificate validity. Okay, certificate validity will be maximum 2 years. Most of the organization will keep. Okay, if certificate is going to expire, if you are not monitoring the certificate validity, then it is going to be a downtime. If you are not monitoring the certificate validity.
Well, rather than calling it downtime, it will be a security threat basically. Like if your certificate is expired and people really trust your website, so even with the expired certificate for some time, people can like browser website, but yes, that is also valid point that monitoring a particular certificate validity has to be there. Yes, I am in agreement with you. But that is from infrastructure point of view, not from microservice point of view. So let us say when we talk about Java, we have to monitor the heap size. How much heap size is there? How many objects are there? Whether GC collection is happening properly or not. These sort of things we have to monitor. Moreover, whenever any microservice is being deployed, so there is a particular health check API for that service. Now, what does this health check API include? So that will include not only that microservice is up and running, moreover, that API will include that microservice is able to connect to some of the databases, because until unless database is able to get in touch, like microservice is able to open connection with database, that is of no use, right? So we are going to ask developer to provide an endpoint for that microservice that we need to put it under monitoring. Getting point? Aside to that, we will have to monitor the particular like number of connections which are opened with that microservice. Moreover, we will have to ensure the load testing of it, that how much traffic can this microservice handle. Moreover, how much resources we have allocated to this microservices. Maybe every microservice will have its own JVMs, right? Like Java virtual machine, it will have. So how much memory which we have allocated to microservice, out of that, how much is being utilized? If that is required to be increased, or we have allocated like extra memory, like we have over allocation for that particular microservice, we have to monitor that part as well. So in order to have precise monitoring, we need to go for load testing. How do we do that? What is plan of that? Like how do we decide like how much memory, how much CPU do we need to allocate to that microservice? These sort of thing we have to consider before implementing monitoring. Moreover, let us say there is a microservice which can handle up to 80% of CPU load and is serving properly without any latency, without having any lag in response time. So how do we define the threshold? These are the particular things which we will discuss during this particular session. Because see, we can understand, we can learn these things from our experience only, and that is what like we will see here, right? Okay, after Prometheus, let us say we have maybe we have microservices running across maybe 20 instances. Now there is a failed transaction. You get a ticket, right? Or maybe you get a request that this transaction is failed. We need to find out the RC, like root cause analysis for that failure, whether it was from application side, it was from front end, it was from back end, it was from database, maybe any like stream messaging service was unable to process the request in time. So what is the particular failure point? What is the particular, and let us say we have understood that, okay, this sort of failure comes usually because of some microservice application server. So as I told you that microservice is running on 20 different instances. So how will you ensure that which is the particular server where this request is processed? Because we have 20 different servers where microservices are running and requests are getting processed. How will you get to know that where it is processed? So for that, guys, we will have to talk about ELK, like centralized logging management. All the microservices are generating logs on different servers. After generating logs, logstash will collect the logs from different instances, will send it to centralized location, which is Elasticsearch. Now Kibana is going to be used to visualize the logs, right? So how does ELK work? What is the requirement of it? What else can we achieve with the help of ELK, like logstash, Elasticsearch, and Kibana, right? These sort of things we are going to discuss here. Then after, guys, we are going to discuss here about some other components. Like if you are going to become a DevOps engineer, then Linux is such a platform without which we cannot call ourselves a DevOps engineer. At least one operating system extensive knowledge you need to have. And I do not say that you need to be an engineer on DevOps, on Linux operating system, but at least couple of features of Linux we should know, like how do we manage user management, disk management, file permission, and operating system analysis? How do we manage logs? So these sort of topics we are going to cover here, including package management. These are the things which we are going to cover under this particular section. And not the last but the least, guys, we have AWS. like any of the like cloud computing environment. So we will be discussing here like EC2, VPC, like designing infrastructure, and like S3, IAM, these sort of like major tools of AWS we are going to cover under this particular section. For example, let us say there is a very famous question, even which I love to ask. Whenever, if I take interview question, whenever I'm given a responsibility to take interview, so I usually ask a question. Let us say you have a VPC. There are 10 subnets created, and you have a request that you need to create a particular new virtual machine inside a private subnet. There is no naming convention. When someone created that VPC, so person forgot to give naming convention. Or let us say, to make it more complicated, naming convention is not right. Only like subnet 1, subnet 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. Like these sort of names are given. This does not help me to identify it is public or a private subnet. So now you have to identify which subnet is public or which subnet is private. How will you identify a subnet if it is private or a public? Yes, guys. How will you identify a subnet if it is public or if it is private? Anyone can answer the question.
Hi. So whichever does not
By
have
the help of internet gateway.
Okay, Sahil, you please go ahead.
Yeah, the same. I mean, whichever do not have the internet gateway, which is private.
Okay, so where do I check the like internet gateway?
We can check on the subnet, right? Whether
So can we
it's connected.
associate internet gateway with the subnet?
Yeah, routing table, right?
Sir, NAT gate.
Yes, Sahil. So can we associate a NAT gateway with the subnet, or maybe with internet gateway with the subnet?
Yeah, we can do it via, I mean, the routing table, right?
You
Okay,
can allow
good.
those
Yeah.
range of subnets which need to route to outside, right? So
Okay,
that's
that is fine.
there,
Okay,
there we can.
let us say I have a requirement that whenever I create a new subnet, that should be private by default. How will you ensure it? Let me repeat my question once again. Whenever I am going to create a new subnet, let us say I have a big pool of IP addresses, I can create maybe 200 subnets out of that, right? Now the requirement here is that I want to create a new subnet, and that should be private by default. How will you ensure it?
By making the changes in security group inbound and outbound rules.
But
I think we can restrict by not assigning the public IP.
Don't we use an internet gateway on a VPC only? Through VPC?
that will be done with the level of VPC only, but how? We can have a discussion for 5 minutes on this topic.
VPC or load balancer that give direction to the subnet?
The load balancer has nothing to do with a subnet. Because at the time of load balancer creation, we select subnets there, that what are the subnets we are going to associate with that load balancer. But how we are going to make sure that whenever we are going to create a subnet, that should be declared as private subnet by default. And guys, someone answered a question that by not assigning public IP address to that machine, whatever we are going to create, right? So guys, let me tell you, if you associate elastic IP address or maybe public IP address with a EC2 machine, which is running inside a private subnet, will not be allowing you to connect via internet directly. Even if you allow or not to have public IP address associated with EC2 machine, that does not open internet connection from internet towards that machine. Yes, Abhishek, Akhil, anyone? Raja.
So by default, all the incoming routes are like blocked, right?
So, well, blocking incoming routes, we can definitely play with NACL, like network ACLs there, but that's not the case here. We are just creating subnet only.
I think by default it's like private only, right? So
No.
we have to open it.
By default, it is not private, but we have to make it private by default.
Okay.
How about auto assign public IP is yes?
So Lakshmi, we can disable that feature. That's not the use case. But as I told, let us say if you have not assigned public IP address at the time of machine creation, but later on you thought to assign one elastic IP address with that. So in that case, that will become public once again.
Okay, how about while you're creating a subnet, the default, we can assign the default subnet is yes or no?
Update the security group, inbound or inbound group. Or,
No, actually. Okay, let me tell you. Let me come on to it. So guys, there is a concept of route tables. I guess we all are aware of that, right? So whatever is the main route table of that VPC, there is a subnet of main route table. Whenever we create a VPC, so by default, we end up like getting one default route table for the VPC, right?
Yes.
So what we have to do here is, whenever we definitely, I'll show you that in practical manner as well in coming classes. Do not worry for that. But for now, we can understand we need to create two route tables within that VPC, and with one route table we will assign internet gateway, and with another route table we will create and we will assign in like net gateway. So the particular route table which we are going to create, and we are going to associate net gateway with it, right? So we will define this particular route table as main route table of the VPC. As per the concept, whenever we create a subnet, that gets associated automatically with the main route table of the VPC. I'll repeat this word. I'll repeat this statement once again. Whenever we create a subnet, by default, that consumes the particular main route table of VPC in order to connect to internet or not to connect to internet. So if we create two route tables, and the particular route table where net gateway is associated, if we change the particular mode of that route table to be main route table of VPC, then in that case, whenever you are going to create a new subnet, that will be created by default as private subnet only. That is just a small trick. If we understand the VPC concept, I'll show you in practical manner as well, right? But these are the particular things which a person tries to understand. See, this is not a rocket science. A person is trying to understand that how well you understand the concept of VPC. That is it, nothing else. Clear, guys?
So if we attach with the main route table, it will be like private.
So if your main route table is associated with internet gateway, by default your subnet will become public. But if you associate net gateway with your main route table, it will become private by default. So that will be depending on the route table, whether the main route table is associated with internet gateway or net gateway. As I told you that by default, whenever we create a VPC, there is only one route table available, and that is main route table. And that route table is also associated with internet gateway.
Okay.
So by default, if you talk about any AWS VPC, like you can call the default VPC. So all the subnets which are provided to you are public in nature by default. So what we have to perform here is, we will create another route table. We will create net gateway. We will associate net gateway with custom created the particular route table which we created. We will associate net gateway with that. Now we will declare this route table as main route table for the VPC.
Okay. I mean, in general, if in a VPC, we create like two subnet ranges, one belongs to the public and other belongs to the private. So whenever we want to route the traffic from private gateway to outside, usually we will associate the NAT gateway to secure our subnet IPs. So in this case, what you are telling, like whatever the IP we want to create, if we want to make them private IPs by default, you are telling that in the main route table of the VPC, we need to associate to the NAT gateway instead
Right.
of the
So main route
yeah.
table should be associated with NAT
With
gateway. Yes.
I mean, by default, the main route table will be with the internet gateway. We need to create the other route table that will be associated with the NAT. So whenever we are creating a new IP, we need to associate with the second, which we enabled the NAT, right?
Right.
So I have a doubt. I mean, in this scenario, will be having two NAT gateways.
No, we will have only one NAT gateway. We will have two route tables.
I mean, for the private subnet. Okay, so for the private subnet also, we will associate with the same NAT gateway what we want, right?
Just wait. Allow me to have a minute just to clear your doubt.
How are you going to make the second round table as the default one? It become the main one.
Yes. I got to know that there is a small confusion within route table. How do we define that? That's why I thought of logging into my account and to show you that. I guess you are able to see my screen and we are at VPC page, right?
Yes.
If you see, there is only one default VPC route table we have, and that is written main equal to yes. So if we create another route table here, demo route table, I am knowingly not giving it name as private route table. I will create route table. Once again, I'll go back. Now what I'll do here is I'll create a NAT gateway. Let us assume this particular route table is associated with NAT gateway, right? I'll select this. I'll go to actions and set as main route table. And that is it. Now, whenever you will create, if you see this route table, then internet gateway is associated with it. Do you see this?
Yes.
And as we assumed that this particular route table, which we just created, demo route table, so this route table is associated with a particular NAT gateway here. Let us assume there is a NAT gateway associated, right? So whenever we are going to create a new subnet, so that subnet will be associated with this particular by default.
Got it. Okay.
Until and unless we have explicit subnet association. So all the subnets will be associated with main route table of the with main route table of that VPC. I guess that makes sense.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
I'm going to.
Yeah, thank you. It's very clear. It's very clear. I appreciate that.
Yes, because see, it is not like we know how to create VPC. It is like we understand how does VPC work. Okay, one more very interesting thing I would like to ask, guys. Final thing for the day. After that, we will call it a day. Let us say this is also an interview question which is usually asked, because to understand that how much do you know about a particular EC2 machine creation, that EC2 machine is not getting created from this particular dashboard itself, but there are some different components which are included, which are part of your requirement collection, requirement gathering. So guys, let us say when I'm creating this EC2 machine, just see this. when I'm creating this particular EC2 machine. So what do I want? I want like auto sign public IP. This particular section should not be coming as enabled. This should be coming use subnet setting disabled. I can select disable from here, but how will I set use subnet setting disable? Do you guys see any option here to disable it? Yes, guys. Use subnet setting enable. I want to see use subnet setting as disable.
I'm not sure of the answer.
How to do that?
Okay. So in order to modify this option, which is available on EC2 dashboard, once again, we will have to jump to VPC section. This setting, which is appearing here, that will be modified after going to VPC section. Because see, VPC and EC2 are interconnected. So what do we do here is, we will go to subnet. And if you see, there is a particular subnet which I was trying to play with, that was of this one, like AP South 1A. I will select DB subnet. Like these are just names I have given. These are just random names. Because see, I keep on teaching and I keep on modifying it. So what do I do here is, over here within this particular subnet, if I go here, actions, so there is a particular option of like autos and public IP. Let me show you that CID revision. No, it is not like that.
Yeah, Lokendra, it is under edit section, Upper action, edit subnet settings.
Yeah, this one. Yeah, this is enable autos and public IP. If you uncheck it, and if you save it, once again, if you go back to your EC2 machine, well, thanks for reminding me, because right now the particular interface is a little modified. So even sometimes I have to struggle with it. I know the options, but based on this interface, I have to struggle sometimes. Go here, hit next. Right now, we need to select this one. Use subnet setting, disable. If I select any other subnet, that will be enabled. So in order to modify this option on this particular console, we have to modify the setting within VPC section. Because VPC and subnets are directly associated with EC2 machine. So I hope that makes sense, guys.
Yeah.
So yes, guys, now
It's clear for me.
so guys, I would like to get your feedback on this particular session, because that is it for today. What I wanted to describe, like what I wanted to tell you guys, like what are the particular topics we are going to cover up to the depth I have just told you. So need not to worry about that. So guys, any feedback for the session if you have, then I would love to hear that.
Session is very
When the batch is gonna start?
So batch is started from today itself. This is the first demo session, you can call it, or you can call it first class of the session. We will continue it from today itself. Like tomorrow at the same time, we are going to have second class of the session. And we will begin with infrastructure architecture flow. Like how does infrastructure architecture work? Like how does the flow of infrastructure work? That sort of thing we are going to begin with. And after that, definitely we are going to continue from Monday onwards. So guys, class would be 4 days in a week, because sometimes it happens like, as you see that even I'm a corporate working guy. So sometimes there might be some activities in my production environment, or might be some scheduled tasks. So I might not be able to take a class maybe once in a week, right? So 4 days in a week, we will understand, like Monday to Thursday or Friday. If it is not happening in any of the weekday, then it will be taken on Friday. If it is 4 days in a row, then I'll take an off on Friday. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
The
So-
timing will be 8 to 9:30. 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. Like the same time as we started it today.
Yes, recording session. Are you going to
Recording sessions for this and next class will be uploaded on YouTube for public. From Monday onwards, all the registered candidates will be allowed to access these recordings. I'll share the private link of these videos with registered candidates only.
Okay.
So
So
will you
duration-
cover the Azure top?
Duration will be 1 month, like 1 calendar month. You can understand by 15th of May, 15th of April, we will complete this batch at max.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
AWS will be starting fast or at last?
Pardon?
AWS.
So AWS, like AWS Linux will be discussed in beginning. Then after we will go to Git, Jenkins, Ansible, and rest of the tools. Because until unless we understand these things, so it will be a little difficult for us to move forward.
Okay. So we can ask like deep level any topic on AWS. Any doubt is there? Any questions?
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Okay.
Are you gonna share only videos, or are you gonna share any notes regarding the interview questions?
Okay, so let me tell you very clearly, I do not share notes. Why it is so? Because if I create my notes and you have to read it, it will be really hard for you. Because the particular perspective which I understand from any topic, so you might have different preview, different perspective of that. So I'll tell you during the particular session that these sort of things are discussed during interview, so you can make your own note during the batch. You can have a notepad handy, you can create your own notes, and if you have any doubt, we can discuss that.
And for sure, you're not gonna cover KS.
Like Kubernetes you are talking about.
The Kubernetes, you're not gonna cover it, right?
So as I told that will be based on demand. If people are aware of that technology, see, as I told, people should be having basic knowledge of these things, because I'm not going to teach these tools. I'm going to help you with, like, if you know then what are the particular core areas which are discussed during interview. So this will be like, first of all, we need to understand this thing. This is going to be interview preparation session. If you do not know about any tool, then how would you be able to face interview on that particular, right? So we need to have basic understanding. This is going to be a sort of brush up session. If you have any doubt, someone might have ever asked you any question, if you might have ever faced any interview before, so we are going to clear those doubts here. Clear?
Yes. Look.
Okay, great. Any other question, any suggestion, guys? Any feedback for the session? How was it? Did you like it? It was interactive, it was boring, or some sort of feedback? I would love to hear that.
Hi, this is Shivashri. I have a question like, do you cover the Azure DevOps related things as well in the interview questions?
No,
Okay.
because this is not AWS DevOps. This is not like, this is open source DevOps. Like Git is common, Jenkins is common. So all the common things, see, like we are not going to cover DevOps on Azure. We are not going to cover DevOps on AWS or maybe on Google Cloud. This is in general DevOps. So if you know these tools, you shall be able to crack any interview. Why it is so? Like there might be some different name of tools. Like you are talking about Git, it could be code commit. You are talking about Jenkins, it could be your let us say code deploy or code build on AWS. You are talking about Ansible, it could be code pipeline on AWS, right? You are talking about Prometheus, it could be Cloud Watch on AWS. You are talking about MySQL, it could be RDS on AWS. You are talking about Docker, it could be your ECS, Elastic Container Service on AWS. You are talking about ELK, it could be MSK on AWS. You are talking about Linux and AWS itself, right? So we are talking about in general. Be it is like only names are going to be different, but the concept is going to remain same.
Terraform is not here. So can we ask some questions?
Yeah, sure. You can ask question from Terraform as well. But as I told you, that will be depending on the interest of the students. Because most of the students are not like even basic things are they do not know. So interview preparation will be little difficult. Let us say I'll be talking about like main.tf. Why do we use it? I'll be telling you the scenarios. I'll be telling the use cases that which are discussed during interview. And if you do not have basic knowledge, I'm not pointing out to you individually. If the particular guys attending the batch does not have basic knowledge about that particular, it will be difficult to teach.
Okay.
But yes, if you have any doubt or any question, then definitely I would love to help you with that.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it would be good if you include the Terraform, because the instruction code is very important.
For
and
sure.
I don't know about Python, but at least Terraform.
See, let me tell you one thing very clearly. I'm certified on Terraform. So whatever you ask, I'll be able to help.
One more thing, look in the on scripting, like what you suggest, like shell scripting or like Python.
So if you need to learn, like you do not know any of them, then I'll suggest to go with Python. Why it is so? Because Python is not only used for scripting, but like a lot of automation can be done. Maybe it will help you to write Ansible. Maybe it will help you to understand the particular concept of Git when you will go to DSL, domain specific language. Because that includes some part of programming as well, right?
Yes.
So if you have to learn from scratch, then go with Python, not with like Bash. Because if you know Linux, you already know the commands. And set of commands put together is known as script. Logics, whether it is Python or it is Bash, you will have to put there. So in order to parse the logs in Bash shell, it will need a lot of commands. Moreover, it will need a lot of processing, wherein you can import any existing library which is written in Python, and you can like extract it. Maybe if you have to play with the like dates, if you have to play with the like logs, if you have to play with the file names, it is really easy to parse in Python in comparison to Linux. So if you ask me a suggestion that what should I learn from scratch, then definitely I would go with Python only.
Okay, sure.
So, well, thank you, everyone. I'll be sharing this particular like via YouTube to every one of you. Tomorrow, we are going to have the first session of this particular batch. Like this can be, if we consider this as a demo. So tomorrow is going to be first class. If we consider this as a class, then it is going to be second session. And let's continue from tomorrow. Right, guys?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Tomorrow.
Thank you so very much for your time on the call. I would love to see you tomorrow in the like in the same batch, same time tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Have a good time. And if you have any feedback, then you can ping me directly. You can call me, as you all have my number. So I'll be there to help. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good time.